Chase the Traveler back again with part 2 with Mr. Kenny Johnson, the Harvard graduate. We're going to talk about his experience working at Japanese institutions, the types of aggression. I'm pretty sure that sometimes there were good times working at these companies, but also the lack of opportunity, the lack of recognition that you would expect someone who graduated from Harvard, having worked that hard, having paid all that money to get an education, you would kind of like expect a certain type of recognition. So I'm going to ask him how he feels. So let's, without further ado, let's continue our interview and gain some more knowledge. So, Mr. Johnson, all right, so let's go with part 2. So now, I read the letter that you sent complaining about your mistreatment at, now you were working for an agency that sent you to work at a university.
Yes.
Now, you also mentioned that, and I know this for a fact also, I mean, when you work teaching at a university, you kind of have to have a degree.
Yeah.
Not only just a college degree, but you kind of have to have a master's in order to work at a university, to teach at a university.
Yeah.
And you were the only qualified person to go to that university. But even though you were the only qualified person to go to that university, they were kind of like, the agency that sent you didn't want you to send your credentials to the university,
Yeah.
which basically the university relied on the agency as to what credentials the teachers had.
Yes.
So they didn't go directly through you, which is kind of typical in Japan, because I mean, a lot of ALTs who teach at high schools and who teach in elementary schools who go through an agency, usually the agency does all the work. So the high school, the junior high school or the elementary school don't even know what the teacher's qualification is. So the university that hired you probably didn't even know that you were as qualified or even overqualified to do the job.
Did not.
So the agency kind of like kept that under wraps. They didn't want you to tell them that.
Yeah.
And they kind of made it difficult for you to work. And not only that, they kind of like sent someone to work at the school that wasn't even qualified, shouldn't have even been there, but they kind of like liked more than you, even though you had the qualifications.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, when you don't have the qualification, they sometimes tell you, oh, well, you don't have the qualification. But then when you have the qualification, they kind of make it look like something else is wrong.
Yeah.
So you can't catch a break either way.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about that experience. So you were working at a school.
Yeah.
So what made it difficult? How did your situation crumble with management, where you had a good rapport with the university, but the situation with the agency kind of like went downhill, and it wasn't based on anything that you had done professionally?
That's right. And so it was an agency that I signed a contract with. They sent me to the university. In fact, the agency was actually on the campus itself.
Okay.
And they had all of my information. I went out to teach at the university. As you said, the university, I never had a problem. I was always on time, never called in sick. My ratings were very high with the students. My students would often ask me, why you're so nice to us? And I would say, because I love you. And then they say the same thing back to me, which is very unusual in Japan to say those words, but that's how good the relationship was. And as you said, the problem came when the agency was giving my information to the university. For example, the university had elementary school, it also had a junior college within it, and also had a university.
Oh, so this is like one of those this is like one of those schools where you can progress naturally by just graduating, and if you went to that elementary school, you could go to that high school.
Yes.
If you went to that high school, you automatically get into the university.
Yes, they had an elementary school, high school, junior college, and the university itself. And one day when I was, the university sent an email to the staff, or me also, we're looking for someone to teach at a junior college, but it requires a master's degree. And so my office, where I was at, was scrambling to figure out who was going to do it. even though I was the most qualified to go and teach.
And you had the master's
I was
degree.
the only one in the office that had a master's degree.
You were the only one. They had some excuse.
And had the highest rating amongst the teachers.
And which in Japan, that's a double-edged sword. I mean,
yeah.
You're not supposed to be the popular one because it's not politically correct.
Not correct, yeah. And so the foreigners in the office, the Japanese would never say anything directly derogatory to me, but the foreigners in the office would say to the Japanese staff, "Oh, don't send Kenny to the junior college because he's not good at keeping records. He's not good at using computers."
Even though you were more qualified than them, somehow their word was supposed to be better than yours, even though they weren't, qualified to give an opinion, professional opinion.
That's a surprising thing. So when I was leaving, eventually when I left, I actually said the same words that you had just said. They said, "Well, you're not good at using computers." So I finally said to one of the foreigners, "You're not even qualified to make the distinction."
Exactly, because
So
I
why?
said, I went to Harvard.
Yeah.
I've got higher credentials than you.
I was a physics teaching assistant at Harvard using computers and statistical analysis and data analysis. So how am I not qualified? And so I finally said to this foreigner, how are you even qualified to make that distinction?
And not only that, the thing about it is, right, that I hate saying this, but his color made him qualified.
That's right. That's the thing.
His color qualified him.
That's the thing.
So it doesn't matter what your not certificate. It doesn't matter what your degree said. The fact that politically, he was politically correct.
Right.
Now in America, that wouldn't have worked to that degree.
No.
But in Japan, it kind of made sense.
It made sense in Japan.
Even though it doesn't make logical sense.
In America these days, people would raise an eyebrow if someone said, in the office, every day they said something derogatory about a student or myself, or, "Oh, he's not good at this, you're not good at that." In America, it wouldn't fly because Americans are very intelligent people, and Japanese are very intelligent people.
Yeah, because
and the thing was, if somebody had said, "Oh, you're not good at using computers in the office," most people would say, that's not something wrong with that. That doesn't sound right.
You know something? And, now there is racism in America.
Yeah.
Okay, things are not equal in America.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that, obviously, if you show up with a degree from Harvard, and the person that doesn't have the degree from Harvard, they're going to shut up. They're not even going to question you.
That's the thing. That's the beauty of it, that if you show up with your credentials, or even if you don't have a degree from Harvard, if you have the qualifications,
and someone who doesn't have the qualification can't really
they would not listen
question
to
you.
They can't at all.
But in Japan, it's kind of like they can question you, and you have no recourse.
Can you imagine going on a flight and the captain, a senior pilot in the cockpit, and then a person of a different color says, "I don't think you should take that route today, sir, because based on my experience." And the one with the least qualifications is telling the senior captain how to fly the airplane. Would you get on the airplane to go someplace? Would you get on the
that's
doctor? Would you get on the doctor?
That is something that a lot of people don't understand about Japan sometimes. Certain things are very illogical here,
right.
And unless you live here, and unless you document each and every thing that happens that's illogical, nobody would ever believe you.
Not at all, unless you've been here like you and myself.
The only foreigners kind of like understand these things.
Right, you would not believe it.
Nobody would believe it because nobody would show you that.
No.
And the Japanese are so good at controlling their image, and a lot of the foreigners that come here, they kind of like, they fall into that, okay, let me just toe the line, right, in order to be able to, and think that somehow when they toe the line that they're going to get something out of it. And I know for a fact that just because you're white in Japan, just because you're from America, there are degrees of racism that people don't understand. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, just because you're white in Japan doesn't mean that you're not going to face racism.
Right.
You will most certainly face racism in Japan, even if you're white.
Because we're all foreigners.
Exactly. Now, if you put a whole bunch of white people with some black people, yeah, at the workplace, the white people might get a little bit of an edge, but it's not that much of an edge.
Right.
I've never seen a situation where I've worked with other ethnic groups at an English school where they're making 5% more than me, 3% more than me, or 10, 20% more than me. But I have seen situations where they get more classes than me.
Oh yeah, I've been there too. Yeah.
I've seen situations where their schedule is better than mine.
I've been there too.
But please continue. Now, you're saying that, you had somebody that wasn't qualified to give an opinion, to give a professional opinion on your work, giving professional opinions on how you were supposed to conduct yourself in the classroom,
Completely irrational.
which he wasn't qualified to do.
Not at all.
Interesting. So now, you did, when I read your letter to management,
Yeah.
complaining about the abuse that you had received,
Oh, yeah.
even though you had never been absent,
Never.
you had never come in late,
Never.
you were more qualified than everybody else.
Absolutely.
You were not being paid more because of that extra qualification that you had.
That's right.
Now, how were you received? How were your complaints received?
Well, as I thought, for example, being in this culture, I understood that they politely have to listen. I went to the administration office and I said there's a problem, and not with the university itself, but in the management of my contract. And I explained the situation, I explained the abuse. I wrote out a very nice letter, very well written, I think, which they had actually said. Many people who were upset, many people come in upset, you're very calm. I just told them what the situation was, and I thought the outcome would be as it ended up being. They would listen politely and not do anything. Well,
Which is normal.
Which is normal. And the reason why they can't do anything is because, as you said earlier, if you've been in Japan, they don't want to upset the harmony of things, the so-called harmony. Things are supposed to be harmonious. If I bring up the fact that I'm not being treated well, I'm being called names, being called my skin color is this, and I can't do this because of my skin color, then that's completely embarrassing to the culture.
And not only that, not only is it embarrassing, not only do you have no professional recourse with the job that's supposed to protect you from these things, you have no legal recourse either.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Even if you were to document it, even if you were to put them on tape, you couldn't go to court and get any kind of...
If I had put down power harassment, discrimination, the thing about the world is that people don't like to be confronted with these issues. When I was at Harvard, I was in a class it was called Racial Diversity.
And you were also teaching at Harvard.
Teaching at Harvard. The class was called Racial Diversity and how to teach people with different ethnic backgrounds. And one day the assignment was to talk about our experience with racism. There were a few black people in the class and people from all over the world, Korea, China, and myself. And that's what I like about Harvard is the diversity. And the professor of the class even said to us, if you want to take control of this class and just give your speeches, it's okay, but I'm afraid to get into the conversation because if I say the wrong thing, I may be in trouble. What has happened in the past is that someone has made a comment about this situation objectively, that situation. Someone may have gotten offended and said, oh, the professor said this. So often, even the teacher's afraid to talk about these topics. And that is the problem, is that people are too afraid in order to solve a problem, we have to talk about it. We have to confront it. We can't just look into an airplane engine and say, the boat looks loose, we'll just leave it like it is. We just let it alone. You have to get on it. You have to get to it.
Now, let me ask you this. In Japan, I've always felt this in Japan. When I lived in America, I honestly, when I was younger, I actually never even felt racism because I didn't even know what it was. Because I had dated people of different ethnicities when I was younger, when I was before coming to Japan. I came to Japan at 21. I had dated white people, and I kind of felt like, something, racism really isn't as bad as people are making it out to be, because I really had never worked in America in a professional setting. I had part-time jobs. It wasn't until I came to Japan that I really understood racism and where people were not treating me like I felt they were supposed to treat me. And one thing that I did notice was that in America, for example, when I was in America, and when I was dealing with, let's say, with people of different ethnicities, whether they were white, they were kind of always politically correct with me. They never said anything that was overtly racist or that I would think was racist, even though, sometimes I would have an argument with the white person or whatever, but I never thought it had anything to do with racism. But when I got to Japan and I started working at English conversation schools, I kind of felt that people, or white people in Japan, even when they were American, they were bolder. They weren't really afraid to show me a side of them that, something, yeah, I'm racist, and I might even say something that could be considered racist in America that I would never say in America, but I could say it in Japan because I know you can't do anything about it. You're not going to run back to America and complain because we're in Japan. And the Japanese don't have any laws to protect you, so therefore I can say whatever I want to say.
And they're not going to be held accountable.
And you could go complain as much as you want, and nothing's going to be done. So ha ha ha. So let me ask you, Kenny.
Yes.
Do you feel like powerless here when it comes to things that in America you would have been able to handle, that would have never been accepted in a professional setting, that over here you can't really do anything about because there are no laws, there are no rules to protect you? You can complain about it, but you really have no recourse.
Yes, no discrimination laws here, and I feel the same way in America. I never felt racism. As a matter of fact, I grew up in an all-white neighborhood, and my sister-in-law is white. My friends were Asian, my friends were African. I was in a very diverse high school, so I never was treated with any racist thought or verb. And I didn't know I was any different than anybody else. I thought I was just a human being. But here,
yes,
as you said, there's no accountability.
And not only that, I remember when I first came to Japan, I think within my first month or two here, I remember I was at a bar, like a gaijin bar. It's like one of those places that foreigners and Japanese people congregate. And this white guy asked me about racism, and I told him, listen, this is all BS. There is no racism. That's how strongly I felt about it as a young man. But lo and behold, a few years later, my attitude would change. But yes, please go. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No. Right, you're right on the money. Like, I never felt any different in America. When at my university, the teacher who gave me the job that I had required a PhD. I got the job teaching at Harvard with a master's degree because he said I was good with people, which I was told that often. And so I never felt, the person who gave me the job was from Germany. He was a professor, and he never treated me differently than anybody
And you got
else.
the job because you were qualified.
Oh, absolutely.
And you didn't get it because of your skin color.
No. I got the job because I was qualified. They treated me with respect, which you should treat people with respect, regardless of their background. The fact that a human being walks by, you should automatically treat them with respect. Any living thing that walks by, treat them with respect.
Now, Kenny, let me ask you this, right?
Yeah.
Now, I did want to talk about the situation that you had at work with the two ladies. Now, they were Japanese American, or?
One lady was a white lady.
Mm-hmm.
And
from where?
You mean at the university?
Yes, the university.
No.
The people, the ladies that were supervising you.
The lady was white, and the other lady that was office
She was from
supervisor
America or Australia?
From America.
From America, okay.
And the other lady was Japanese. And the lady who was
she Japanese American? Because she had
No, she was married to, he is married to a Japanese man. So her last name was Japanese, but she was from America.
She was from America,
Yeah.
okay. And the other lady was?
Japanese.
Was Japanese altogether, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so...
The difficulty was the Japanese...
Was she a Japanese person who grew up in America, or was she a Japanese who grew up in Japan?
She grew up in Japan.
Yeah, because they're sometimes they act differently.
Oh,
so.
absolutely true. And the reason why, it's a good question you asked me about where to grow up, is because I realized, although the Japanese lady didn't grow up in America, she was influenced by the white person.
Yep.
To behave and act and judge in a certain way, because whatever the person said, you're not going to use the computers. So during my end of the year evaluation, the Japanese lady said, "Oh, it was said that you're not going to."
So
she just repeated what.
So you could only imagine what they were saying in private.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah.
So who hired you? Was it the American lady or was it the Japanese lady?
The Japanese lady.
Okay, so the Japanese lady hired you, but the American lady probably wasn't all that happy with that.
No, the reason why I don't belong.
And the fact that you had more credentials than her definitely would have been upsetting.
I don't belong to a religion, but God must have been looking out for me that day. When I went for the interview,
she wasn't there.
Right, exactly. But the bus was late, and I called. I said, because it's the university on top of a mountain. You have to ride a bus. You have to transfer. So they didn't blame me for being late. For everyone that comes for an interview is late, because it's really a maze. So when I finally got there, the white lady was there, but the actual hiring person had to go someplace. So she just saw my resume and said, "Oh, okay, looks like a nice person." But I'm afraid that maybe if they saw me in person, maybe they would just say, "Oh, he's too overqualified."
So she hired you based on your credentials, but then you kind of feel like she made the situation a little bit difficult for the American lady who wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But then but then when you got hired, it she was kind of like influenced to treat you a certain way based on what the American lady, the kind of like subtle pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one thing that I do want to ask is that another thing that I noticed that, you spent most of your time in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I spent most of my time 3 hours away from Tokyo in Osaka. And we're kind of like, the experiences are really, really similar.
That's what I was
and
gonna
like
say.
the professional experience. Now, one thing that I kind of like know for a fact is that, didn't you feel like at some point you I know that you did say that you couldn't leave because you had your mother-in-law, they treated you nicely, your wife was good to you, so therefore you didn't really feel like, like your home life was good, so you didn't really feel like, you wanted to leave. But one thing that, I myself, having taught in Japan for so many years, I didn't have any teaching credentials. But you yourself, with the masters, you would have been able to go back home. You would have been able to get tenure, or you would have been, the university would have treated you better. You would have gotten way more professional. Let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? You would have gotten more stability.
Right, more stability.
Because from what you're telling me, your contract is year to year.
Year to year.
So after every year, they could get rid of you.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the fact that you stayed there for 5 years, it speaks to itself, because you probably really had to like change yourself and accommodate them in a way that you probably had to do some sort of, you were like a contortionist.
Oh yeah, I had to think out of the box, and how can I improve their attitude? How can I show them how to level up? But I had to be a contortionist. He's a nice dog, very kawaii.
Yes. So you had to be a contortionist, pretty much.
Yeah, I had to be a contortionist.
So you had to twist yourself in a way just to adapt.
I did.
I mean, the fact that you lasted 5 years was good. I mean, I myself usually, I'd say the average for people like us is like 3 years and you got to move on.
Yeah. Dedication. My family, that's why they love me. They could see that I don't quit. I try my best. I look very attractive. Paradoxically, I look very attractive. That made me look more attractive to my family, because, hey, this person doesn't quit. They try to help society. They respect society.
So they knew what you were going through based on
yeah.
all the effort that you put in.
Yeah.
So now, didn't you feel like, I've always, after being in Japan for about 2 to 3 years, I knew the place wasn't right, but the money was still good.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like, okay, let me just hang out a little bit.
Yeah.
But for you, you basically decided to think of your family instead of thinking about the amount of money that you could have made back home.
Right. My mother's, they told me about the history of the neighborhood. It was bombed during the war, World War II, and that area they were living in, somehow the targets missed the houses and didn't burn down, but around it was burning, and they had to stay in the river. There's a river around there. They would stand in the river to not get burned. My mother-in-law said I was born in this house here, and then she got married, and a few doors down she lived in the house. My mother-in-law, my wife, and her sister, and my sister's kids went to the same school.
But didn't you ever feel like, something, I think maybe I need to take my family home in order to be able to have some sort of opportunity, because no matter what I do here, after 25 years, I'm not being promoted. I'm not, I don't know. I myself, I don't think I've ever gotten a raise in Japan.
I've never gotten a raise.
You've never gotten a raise either. But you probably would have gotten a raise if you had been in America.
I'm sure, yeah.
So you never got promoted, you never got a raise, but then you stayed here for family.
Yeah,
do you ever have any regrets?
No, because I realized my wife is such a nice person. In fact, when I first met her, she had all the Michael Jackson CDs that I had. When I first talked to her, I said,
So you really found somebody that you could relate to.
oh yeah, and she's Japanese, but she looks and acts like an international person. She's never.
So you really found your soulmate.
Yeah, and she had all the. She said I like Michael Jackson. And she showed me her CD collection, and I said I have the same ones. When I had my head injury that I told you about earlier, her mother said stay at the house. We were worried that I lived it alone. She said stay here. We're worried you'd be by yourself. There was no rooms available except my wife's room and her sister's room. And I stayed in the room with her sister and my wife, and I wasn't married to them yet. There I was.
So you felt really, really accepted.
Oh yeah.
Where you kind of felt like, my goodness, I think that family is way more important than money. It's way more important than the stuff that I'm dealing with at work. I love my job, but I'm going to have to just hang in there.
Oh, yeah.
I love teaching. That's what I studied to do. That's what I want to
I
do.
thought it would get better, actually. I thought, well...
You thought the situation would improve?
I thought that it's only me. I thought...
It's not you.
I thought before YouTube, the beauty of YouTube is that everyone can share these stories. But before YouTube, it's like, oh, I didn't hear anybody else's story. I thought,
but most people are afraid to tell their story.
And then I realized, like you said, oh, now I can see they're hinting at it when I see these conversations, but they don't really tell what's going on.
No, I'll tell you this. When I speak to foreigners privately, whether they're white, black, or different ethnicities, they will always privately share their concerns, their regrets about living in Japan. When it comes to putting them on camera, a lot of people will not do it, and the reason they won't do it is because they still work with the Japanese people and they're afraid about losing their job. They can't. They haven't figured out what would happen if they go back home. They're married, they've got kids. So I know a lot of people that I'm not saying that everything about Japan is bad, but a lot of foreigners have a lot of complaints that they just can't complain about because they're outnumbered, they're unprotected, they feel vulnerable. If they go out there and they start talking, all of a sudden somebody might see it. Their jobs are pretty much from year to year. They don't really have a lot of job security, so they can't really talk. So, I found myself like that for a very, very long time. And right now, I can say what I want to say. I can speak freely because I'm not bound to any Japanese company.
Hallelujah.
I'm not like, I can speak, I'm free. So, but in closing, we're gonna talk again because I want to talk about what you want to do going forward. I mean, we've been here for quite a long time, and obviously, I myself, I don't plan on being here forever. So I want to get your take about your regrets, and also we didn't talk about what you did in regards to what happened when you complained. We didn't get that, so I'm going to get that in the next episode. But I do want to know, I want you to share with us what they said, what they did, how they did it, if they did anything. So anyway, we're going to end it right now, but then of course there's going to be one other episode. Now I've never done this before, but I really felt that I really needed to speak to Mr. Johnson based on the fact that you've got a man with really a credentialed individual, which again, it's very, very rare in Japan to find someone from Harvard who's got a teaching degree. Honestly, in my 30 years of being here, I've never seen one. I've worked at a lot of different schools. I've met one guy from Oxford that I was working with that was actually studying. He hadn't even finished his degree. We were working together in Kobe. I think I've met one other person that had a teaching, I'm not sure if he was a teaching degree, that was teaching at a university before also. But the fact of the matter is that these people are very, very rare. And I feel like these are the people that we should listen to, because you have a situation where you have people that have got credentials being told that they're not good enough by people who don't have any credentials, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And only in Japan would something like this happen.
Exactly.
But either way, stay tuned. Let's take a break. And we're going to finish the conversation with Mr. Johnson in the next episode.